The Evil Within is one of my all-time favorite games. People seem to either love or hate it. It was criticized for the hard-to-follow plot and the aspect ratio, amongst a couple of other things, but I've always been one of the people who looked past its flaws and saw it as the awesome survival horror game it aimed to be. And here we stand 3 years later with a sequel, The Evil Within 2. I gotta say, I watch Bethesda's E3 conference every single year just in case they announce this game, for no other reason. So when they dropped that trailer for it back in June, boy, I tell ya, I got real excited. This game has a lot of potential to fix the flaws of the first game and to deliver something really special. Judging from the trailers, it looks like it's headed in a really good direction, but I guess we won't actually know until we play it ourselves, so let's do it. Taking place 3 years after the Beacon Hospital incident, The Evil Within 2 kicks off with Sebastian drunk off his ass in a bar. Julie Kidman approaches him and tells him that she and Mobius need his help. It turns out that Sebastian's daughter Lily, who was long thought dead in a fire, was actually kidnapped by Mobius to be used as a core for their version of STEM. But recently her signals vanished, leaving her consciousness lost within STEM, and any Mobius operatives they send in to go find her turn up dead. Seeing as Sebastian was one of the only people to ever successfully enter STEM and make it out alive, they recruit him to go in once again and find Lily, of course to which he only agrees to so he can save his daughter. The beginning is pretty interesting because from the get-go we know exactly what STEM is this time. The Evil Within 1's plot was all about figuring out that this weird reality, in fact, wasn't real at all, but instead was part of a collective consciousness simulation. While the first game's plot revolved around learning what STEM was and learning all about Ruvik, who is the core of Beacon STEM, the plot this time is a lot more personal to Sebastian. Instead of being a mystery about what's going on and discovering Mobius, the shadowy villains behind it all, we know all of that from the start and we're thrown in this time for reasons much more personal. The game's earliest moments are fairly similar to that of the first game in that you don't have any weapons, but instead of simply running from a dude with a chainsaw, we're subject to this very elaborate and interesting environment. Even though we know what STEM is this time, new mysteries are quick to arise. This first chapter here does such a good job with the atmosphere. There's a level of subtlety and absurdity here that was ever so absent in the first game, and it actually had me a little bit on edge. I'm not gonna lie, I really wasn't expecting this game to be very scary after playing the first one, but there's a deeper level of psychological horror here instead of just, giving a guy a chainsaw and telling him to run and scream at you and pretending that's how you scare the player. I mean, like, look at this. Yeah, no, okay, what was that? I know that subtlety is a word that people love to just throw around without really understanding the meaning of when trying to praise a horror game, but this is what I mean. Another example, there's this one part when I was running from a monster, but I didn't get a good look at it. I just knew it was after me because I heard these noises and I heard it running, but man, I don't know, I'm usually not too spooked by being chased by things, but I think there were several layers here that made it actually scary to me. Okay, so firstly, I did know what was chasing me. It was just the camera monster. I've even fought the thing at this point, but hearing those sounds instead of watching the animation play, well, that made my brain fill in every horrible blank there was. Listen. Oh, the sound design is there, but I think secondly, and I've made this argument before years ago when I reviewed the Silent Hill games, was that running was not my only option. I could have turned around and fired a shotgun to slow it down, but in this moment of absolute panic, I decided to run, even if I did have other options, and even if I did not really know if running was going to get me out of that situation. And since there were other options, there was this layer of uncertainty. For example, if a game like Outlast has a monster chasing me, the only solution is to run and hide, so I have total faith that doing that is probably going to work. Of course, when you make a game based on that one mechanic, you need that mechanic to work so the game can function, but because of that, I don't feel tense when hiding in a locker because I know that's just how the game's supposed to function. It becomes very predictable. But when there's multiple options like fighting, well, then there's this level of uncertainty to your escape, is this what I'm supposed to do? Is this really going to work? And because of that, for the first time in a long time, I actually felt somewhat scared by being chased by a pursuing monster. Does that make any sense? I remember I tried to make this same argument way back years ago in the Silent Hill video, and a lot of people told me it was a really stupid argument. Maybe this is a better way of explaining it. I don't know. That's just what I thought. There's still a lot of graphical popping during cutscenes, which continues to be distracting. It's not as bad as in the first game, but I still wish they were able to get rid of it completely. I gotta say though, the new monster designs are top notch. I really feel like they took a lot more risks with them this time. You know, instead of the vanilla chainsaw dude or the safe bet with the pyramid head influenced monster, instead we've got a mess of human heads and body parts all blended into a hodgepodge of anatomical nonsense. I don't even know what I'm looking at here, but I know it's terrifying. I also really love the pyro guys, you know, they just look cool. That's all I really have to say. They look cool, dude. This game will really play tricks on you. The environment will change completely at the drop of a hat. You'll just turn around and the area will be totally different. Anyway, why don't we get to the core of why I really love the first game, and that is the gameplay. Fundamentally, the mechanics are widely unchanged. We got the handgun, shotgun, rifle, and crossbow. They all return as the 4 primary weapons. We've got basic crouch-walking stealth, stealth takedown, sprinting. It's all pretty much the same. The elements of ducking behind cover that were present in the first game's DLC make a comeback. You can even do stealth takedowns from cover, given that you got the right upgrade to do so. One thing that really stuck out to me was the removal of the match dropping mechanic. Man, that was one of the coolest things about the first game. I really wonder why they took it out. It's replaced with this generic stomp move, which, yeah, it does the job just as well, but having an unlimited use of this, it's just a really weird design choice, I think. Sprinting doesn't suck ass anymore. That's a big thing that I'm really glad they fixed. I'm sure a lot of people are glad they fixed that one. Man, I don't know what they were doing with the sprint in the first game, but yeah, that's fixed. That's probably a load off a lot of people's shoulders. Bottles work a bit differently though. Instead of holding 1 at a time, you can stock up to 5 in your inventory. You can still use them to cause distractions, but there's other uses for them too, like using one to break free of an enemy's grasp. This is one of the actions you can purchase with green gel. I really like how they've added totally new abilities instead of just making the numbers go up. I mean, you do have the age-old make your health more, make your sprint more, make your whatever more, but you're also able to unlock completely new moves that'll aid you on your nightmarish journey. One of my absolute favorites was the ability to crouch run at an enemy and do a faster stealth takedown. It's very helpful for when you have a smaller window of time before they turn around, and nothing is more satisfying than jumping in the air and slam dunking the knife into their head. Come on. Ooh. Man, I love this so much. It is the most gratifying thing, dude. There's also one that slows down time when you aim, but it costs 1 billion green gel points, so I did not get it on my first playthrough, and I guarantee you're not gonna either. It is really helpful though. Whoa, man. If you can manage to get this, you're gonna like plow through the game, but like I don't think you're getting this on your first go. We've also got the brand new red gel, which further unlocks more purchasable abilities. You only get so many of these, so you really gotta decide what trees you're gonna invest them in. I threw everything into stealth personally, just because I love doing these takedowns, dude. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm never gonna get tired of that. Let's just do another one, right? Yeah. I love this so much. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, one more. Ooh. I'm such an idiot. The weapons are no longer upgraded by green gel, but are now a complete separate entity, using weapon parts to upgrade them instead. It's still very similar to how it worked in the first game, they're just split into different categories that use their own materials, and it's a little further fleshed out. I do like this quite a bit. The game also has a crafting system, which of course I rolled my eyes at the idea of, but thankfully it's fairly simple and non-intrusive. Basically, you collect a lot of gunpowder and you're able to turn that into bullets for whatever gun you'd like. So pretty much you're just getting ammo, but you get to decide what gun you put the ammo in. But of course the stronger guns will require more gunpowder to make a single bullet. So it's like, cool, I got 50 gunpowder. Do I want like 8 handgun bullets, 5 shotgun bullets, or 3 sniper bullets? You know, that's pretty much it. There are other parts like pipes and nails, but these are all for the crossbow bolts. Instead of just using parts to do whatever with, each bolt has a unique component. So all of this means there's a lot more stuff to find, and you really understand why they added all of this because this game's actually an open world game. Well, kinda. It's about as open world as Silent Hill 2. You know, you've got the entire town to explore for supplies and whatnot, but once you get to the building you need to do, you'll go to an actual dungeon. Well, you know, not like a dungeon, but you know what I mean, a level or whatever. It was really different than what I was expecting, but I really liked it. There was a great level of satisfaction that came with finding those hidden nooks and crannies in the first game, so it's kind of like they took that and just went nuts with it. There's tons of buildings you can just go in and explore and just look for ammo and stuff. It's rad. It also greatly complements the more open-ended level design of the first game. I mentioned that people seem to prefer the more elaborate levels where you can really go all around the buildings and stuff in the village and plan accordingly. That kind of design is much more prominent in this game with the open world areas and everything. It was really nice to see them flesh out this aspect of the game's level design. Though if you did like the more linear sections, the game does have a lot of that too. Like I said, you'll find every level on the open map, and then for a good hour or so you'll be doing a more linear trek. It hits a really good balance, honestly a balance taken straight from Silent Hill 1 and 2, but hey, I didn't expect it to work so well for a game like Evil Within. There's a ton of extra stuff to find on the open world areas too. You'll use your radar thing to track down signals. There's a main signal that'll lead you to the next story mission, but there's a lot of side stuff you can tackle first. This is recommended because the game just throws you in there with its device and a handgun. You don't unlock the other weapons through simple story progression. No, you've got to find them yourself. So, you know, tune into those side signals and have at her. There's two open areas in the town of Union. There's the more suburban area with yards, houses, a church, and then there's the more downtown area with diners, bars, hotels. Out of the two, I really like the suburban area more, but you don't get to go there anymore around halfway through the game. It all becomes strictly focused on the downtown area. I kinda wish they used the suburbs more. I wanted to explore it more thoroughly, so pro tip, there's a point when you can't go back, so explore that area thoroughly while you still can. One thing I really hated about this game's presentation is how it does the Skyrim Deus Ex Mass Effect talking thing. You go from these great looking cutscenes animated by hand to this. Okay. The characters just turn into these robots with cookie cutter animations and camera angles just to get across some additional dialogue. I hate this. Yeah, it has a place for RPGs like Skyrim and Mass Effect for sure, but in a survival horror game, what are you guys doing? I don't know, I'm not completely against these. I know why they exist in games, and in any shooter or stealth game with RPG mechanics, sure, like in Deus Ex, it feels fine in that game because that whole game feels like that, but in the Evil Within, it felt super out of place. There's 3 difficulties available from the start. The survival difficulty was made a little easier this time around, probably due to complaints of the first game being too hard. I don't know, I didn't find it too hard, but I don't know. If you're no stranger to survival horror games, I recommend your first playthrough be on Nightmare difficulty. The game itself even recommends that as well. At first though, I found it infuriating. I kid you not, I could not kill the second zombie. I died like 9 times in a row. I was getting so mad, thinking to myself, is this just what the game's gonna be like? Is this gonna be the whole game? One of my biggest problems is that the aiming just doesn't feel as accurate. I know that's typical of playing a shooter with a controller, but I had no problems with it in the first game, so why can't I land accurate shots now? I don't know if it's just me, maybe it's not the controls. Oh, you know what, it might be because the zombies actually move a lot more, come to think of it. That might be why it's so much harder to get those headshots. After realizing this, I really had to stop being so stubborn and just try something different, so I busted through that door and I ran for my life, and from then on, I started being a lot more open to changing up my strategies. I had to stop relying on what worked for me in Evil Within 1. I had to force myself to relearn the game, even if it felt so familiar. I mean, on this difficulty, 1 zombie is all it takes to destroy you. 2 hits from anybody and you're pretty much dead, so avoiding contact is key, but you are gonna want to take them out because, of course, that's how you get brain gel so you can unlock better abilities. And this often begs the simple question, should I stay or should I go? Normal zombies aren't the only enemies you're gonna face out in the open. There's bigger monsters that are more fierce, more terrifying, and harder to take down, though in doing so you will be rewarded with more supplies, at the expense of using up precious ammo. As you adjust to the game's difficult nature, you'll discover things that work, ways to survive. Personally, I greatly abuse stealth, using bottles to draw the attention of enemies and painstakingly taking them out one by one by one. My sheer patience for this specific kind of monotony, constantly rewarded with that slam dunk of a takedown, and the conservation of ammunition. This is how I took to the fields and learned how to survive. Like the lyrics to the Duran Duran song they used in the game's trailer suggest, you will learn to survive. Learn the game's imperfections, abuse those imperfections, become a cockroach, a scavenger, do whatever it takes to survive. You really got it, because bosses that took loads of ammo to take down become regular enemies patrolling the city. I really cheesed some of the pyro guys climbing to the top of a building, abusing the fact that they can't climb ladders, repeating stealth attacks until I took them out. But even then, the game had a couple of tricks up its sleeve, spawning an enemy up in my safe zone, keeping me on my toes, even as I abused what I thought was to be a simple exploit. I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't matter if you were really good at the first game, the Evil Within 2 is gonna kick your ass at first, at least if you decide to play in the recommended Nightmare difficulty, but overcoming the hurdles and learning how to stay alive feels immensely gratifying. Out of any game I've ever played, I really don't think anything else has been more befitting of the title survival horror. Now, this is a survival game, but of course, due to the difficult and sometimes monotonous nature of the gameplay, I can't guarantee that everyone's going to like this game. As a fan of the survival genre and a big fan of the first game, I personally loved it beginning to end. I see it as a huge step in the right direction, fixing the most prominent problems of the first title, being much smarter and subtler with the implementation of horror, and the vast, ambitious expansion on the survival gameplay. It's a much more focused and personal journey. The story is a lot simpler, focusing on Sebastian and his inner struggles, working not to only save his daughter, but to take down Mobius from the inside. We often get to see areas that reflect on Sebastian's PTSD after his horrid experiences, losing his daughter, wife, and the horrific experiences he had at Beacon. Throughout the game, he overcomes these anxieties and emerges a different person, and I really think he's a better character for it. It's surprising how much they were able to do with what was once an alcoholic ex-cop bland as butter character. Unfortunately though, while I did like the change of pace in the story, I didn't really like the delivery. Everyone's voice actor is different, they couldn't get back any of the original cast. Sebastian went from the deep, gruff, cool, calm, and collective tone to something a lot more higher pitched and whiny.
I read the police report! I was at her funeral!
It's not absolutely terrible. There are a lot of good lines delivered by this actor, but many times, especially when Sebastian is angry or yelling, the voice just doesn't sound fitting.
Where did you get this?
Now, as far as the villains go, I wasn't really too big on Stefano, you know, the starving artiste who I need to kill, so beautiful. It's just really cliche. But while I wasn't a fan of the villain himself, I was a big fan of the surrealism surrounding him, you know, slicing open a dude and freezing him in this slow motion time loop thing. Man, it's so weird, but it's cool as hell. All of the level design surrounding this theme of being an artist is so wonderfully pieced together, and I really enjoyed it. I just wasn't a big fan of the character himself. I was getting really bored of him about halfway through, but that's the point when they're like, oh, no, here's the real villain, and I liked him a lot more. My other major complaint about the story is how it just doesn't follow up on some things. Like, if you remember how the previous game ended on a huge cliffhanger, that's just never brought up. The game makes great amends with Sebastian and Kidman's personal sides of the story, but anything that was left untold from the Beacon incident remains untold. Hopefully, if they make a third game, they'll tie up those additional loose ends. I'd love to see what became of Ruvik. Out of the two games, though, I do agree that Evil Within 2 does end up having the better plot. You know, it's a lot more concise and focused, a lot easier to follow, and it's actually about the struggles of the protagonist instead of some other character But yeah, no, overall, the game is fantastic. It really is. They really went back and improved on so much, even completely changing the game's core structure, and I never thought it would, but an open world structure is really fitting for this kind of genre. I think it's a great sequel, and if you like the first game, you're bound to like this one too. However, if you're not really into survival horror games already, and you're a little timid and off-put by the idea of rationing ammo and whatnot, this should not be the first survival horror game you play. Start with Dead Space or Resident Evil 4 or something, but if you are already into this kind of genre, I would absolutely recommend this game. It is so much fun, and yeah.